Yeah, thank you so much for coming in, and this is like a honor to be present here and talk to younger community. I'm always excited to talk to the next generation. It's sort of a hack for me to understand how my future employees will behave. But today I'm here to talk about leadership, and I'll probably take my position and start. So, yeah, I think leadership in the age of AI, and I think most of us are like a little worried about this term AI. And I'm going to talk a bit about it and demystify it. But before that, I'll start with leadership. We all aspire to be leaders. We all want to be like that person in the room who changes the gravity of the room as such. And sometimes, we all want to be the next person who becomes that person as such, with all the fame, the charisma, all the titles. Talk about titles. Is really leadership about the title? Is it about the corner office, the privileges that you get? Or is it something else? And that's what we'll try to demystify today. So, as a young designer from, NID, National Institute of Design, I really did not want to become a leader. And I know that sounds like the most cliche start of a TEDx talk about leadership as such. But it is true. Because when I grew up in Mumbai, and I already had a lot of leadership around me. My dad was a senior employee in the government space. My mom was a senior teacher. My sister was a budding entrepreneur back then, and now she is an entrepreneur. And it was all around me. But there was this one fear that I always had. And that fear was the fear of authority. You see, I had heard a lot of stories about the toxic boss. I'm sure you have heard that as well. Or the person who takes all the credit. Or the one who actually confuses power with purpose. And all that really kept me away from leadership. And here I am giving a TEDx talk on leadership. And that is the reality because after so many years, I ended up becoming one. And today I'm going to talk about the journey of how I ended up becoming one. Today, I'm part of Microsoft as a leader as such. My first learning started when I became a manager. Eventually I had to take up that role, a manager. Note that word, a manager and not a leader. And I took up that role and it was like, okay, let's see, how difficult can it be? How hard can this be? It's just a few people. I have to tell them what to do, sit behind and enjoy the show, isn't it? Or perhaps command people and make them do as per how I want it to be done. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I am not that leader today. And I'm glad that I'm not that because otherwise AI would have taken my job by now. You see, there is this illusion of control that we all have. And delegation is something that we are all taught as managers. When you start as manager, you're taught about delegation. Delegation is this act of giving away tasks to people. However, my fear in delegation was not about, giving away tasks, but the fear was actually me as an expert letting somebody else who is half the expert do the same job in half the time and feeling that, oh, I could have done this yesterday night. Why is this person taking so much time? But that's when I learned the true value of leadership is not that. The true value of leadership and delegation particularly is about trust. It's about orchestrating trust. And it's not about merely delegating. It's about collaborating. The real power is in collaboration. It's being with the person and rather than, just letting it give it away as such. And, giving away your work also takes a sort of a bruise to your ego at times because we all want to protect what we know and always imagine that what we know is the right way of doing it rather than somebody else in our team would do it better than us. And I was wrong, of course. I had to learn to delegate. I'll talk about one particular instance where there was this last minute assignment, and in all corporates we get last minute assignments, right? And I got this work which had to be presented to a senior leadership. And of course, I had the choice. Do I delegate or do I collaborate and co-create with this person? I chose the latter, and I'm glad I chose the latter. I started co creating and collaborating on that particular conceptual vision of the deck because eventually I realized I learned a lot from the employee, from the team member that I had, rather than just trying to do it my own way or just believing that the other person is doing it their own way as such. And that made a big difference because eventually this particular product is now called Viva Insights. And it was eventually launched in a big, all hands and a big organizational conference. And the CEO himself launched it. And it got a lot of laurels. Ironically, the product was also about collaboration. And it actually enables collaboration within the teams. And it got a lot of benefits during the COVID times. So that was a story where I applied and I started learning about it. And even in the age of AI, the idea of co-creation is very important. You can't just merely delegate to an AI. We all think and assume that AI is supposed to magically create whatever we want. But when you co-create with AI, when you work with AI, that's where the magic comes in. Because the intention lies with you. AI is just an enabler. And it again boils down to that one thing I said is trust. Do you trust that AI to work with you? Or do you trust that AI to just produce something and I'll just use it as it is? And that's where it's very critical to co-create with AI. Moving on to my second lesson, and as I grew, my team members grew, it was not less numbers. I had some understanding of delegation, so I was a little better. And I started valuing connections. I started realizing connections. I'll talk a bit about it. You see, most of us think this is how organizations work. There's a boss, and then there is a boss of a boss, and there is a boss of a boss of a boss, and then that's how the organizations work. And I assumed that same. I had the same myth. I assumed that all I have to do is whatever comes from top has to be given to bottom, to my team. Just whatever the top order asks me to do, I have to give it. And I assume that's how organizations work. And I was wrong again. This is how organizations work, not as a ladder. You see, each one of us is a node in the organization. And that node connects with every other node or possible node, passing information, passing empathy, passing values, passing respect. And that is the beauty of organizations. In fact, large organizations, how they work impacts their product as well. There's a law called Conway's Law, which, if it comes on screen, which says that any organization that designs a system or a product inevitably produces a product which is similar to the communication pattern of that organization. So in the end, how the organization is communicating within is reflecting on the product. And that makes a big difference on how you operate and how your team delivers as such. In fact, there's one problem that comes in. Although once you start seeing nodes, I'm sure you have experienced friction. And most leaders, managers are afraid of friction. Friction is a bad thing, right? Like, hey, two people are fighting, my team members are fighting, two organizational leaders are fighting. We are worried about it. But the truth is, in conflict lies innovation. That's the reality. Because when there is friction, there is an opportunity. And when you see opportunity, that's where innovation lies. When you see, as a manager or as a leader, the ability to see through your network for spots where are friction free or friction with friction, and then how do you convert them to opportunity is the key as such. I'll give you an example. So I joined this amazing team, Naam To Suna Yoga, Outlook. The grandfather of all emails, right? And I joined this organization, and we were working well. Outlook was one of the most organized teams I'd ever seen. Everything was well organized. Every team had a clear function. But there was some set of user bases which we were not able to serve. And it was a friction in the system. These users were the ones who were using old phones, the ones who are having really bad connections, the one whose old phone's battery was going away, and there was no outlook for it. And that's when we created Outlook Lite. We went through the full set of network and the dots that we had, and we connected those dots to produce this. And Outlook Lite became 0 to 10 million downloads in just a few weeks. And that taught me that there is opportunity always in friction. Looking beyond your department, looking beyond your invisible walls that you have created in your head is what makes the innovation and the real value collaboration come in as such. So I was fortunate enough to actually work with people to end up with patents, as well as sometimes there was one particular thing when we were hiring students and interns as such. So we thought, why not we do a design competition? So we went across. I went to colleges, but that actual dots that connected later was that those colleges actually enabled and empowered me to become a teacher again and started teaching in those organizations. And I did not know that I had that skill within me, but thanks to connecting the dots, I could actually see the teacher side of me as well. And I'm a pretty good teacher given what feedback I get at times. But moving on, how do you connect the dots with AI? And that's very important. You know, AI has this ability to look at a lot of data and create patterns out of it. And I think that's a superpower that AI has. And in this day and age of leadership in AI, you can actually leverage it. I'll give you an instance. A presentation to a senior leadership, I've actually tried to give a presentation multiple times. But one particular time, what I did was actually summarized all the previous meetings and the feedback, and I got a tonality, I got a pattern, and that reduced the distance to conversation with the leadership. I could land the point faster. So you see, again, a collaborator helping you connect the dots. That's what AI is. And that actually empowers you to be stronger as such. But you can connect all your dots. You can delegate as much as possible. You can co-create as much as possible. But there's one thing, if not done right, collapses all your products. And that is culture. You see, I used to believe that culture is not important. But you've always heard this phrase. I'm sure you must have heard this phrase where culture eats strategy for breakfast. I would say even for lunch, dinner, and desserts as well. Because if the culture is not set well, nothing, even the most talented person in your team will not be able to perform well. And again, as a manager, I used to believe that that's a separate thing to do. Culture is something that you do afterwards. You find all the smartest people in the room, you go ahead and start, giving them the work, and then later do culture. And this is another learning that I've had over life, that culture is not about something that you do later. Culture is everything you do or you don't do. Everything you say or you don't say. Every time your team laughs together, that is culture. Every time your team handles a failure, that is culture. Every time a team member comes ahead and bees their genuine self, that is culture. And hence, culture needs to be curated. It cannot be created. I have been fortunate that I've got multiple teams where I've created multiple rituals. One such ritual that we have is we call it as the River of Life exercise, where we try to understand the real person behind it. We just give 20 slides and we ask them, okay, in 20 slides, explain your life and let us know what you are beyond the work title that you are. It works wonders for us. In fact, I've found musicians, I found scientists, plant lovers, activists in my team by just doing this activity alone as such. Gets to know the real person and confident person behind it. Another activity that we do a lot is easy to do, anybody can do it. It's called as Map My Childhood. You just take any mapping tool and ask person, go to that location and tell us about how you grew up in that location. And trust me, folks, you'll not believe it, the amount of storytelling people can have in the moment just by looking at the location where they are is fantabulous. You just get shocked. And you get to know how the person is built onto what they are because of what are the roots of their person, that person as such. So, yes, what can AI do with culture? Yeah, can it create culture? Not yet. But it can help you curate culture. AI can help you give voice to the introvert. AI can help you give a pause to the extrovert. AI can help the newcomer ask the dumb question without feeling bad about it. And that's the beauty of AI if used well as such. And that's how I have been leveraging AI to curate the culture as such. In fact, there is this thing of like, I started with the fear of not being the leader and I didn't want to become the manager. And I learned the difference between the title manager and leader. You see, manager is just a title, but titles don't define leadership. For me, my greatest success is not all the amazing products that my team has shipped. My greatest success is the people who have actually upgraded themselves and become leaders themselves. And that sort of defines leadership for me. Because leadership is not about titles. Leadership is about the sustainable teams that you build, the sustainable products that you build by enabling. And leadership is about a feeling of responsibility, a feeling of privilege to grow somebody else, a feeling of taking care of somebody else's vision rather than just yourself. And in the age of AI, everyone is a leader. You see, everybody has amazing tools at their hand, but in the age of AI, everyone is a leader. All you need is the courage to care and a confidence that you are one. Thank you, folks.